What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and we've dropped a bunch of draft strategy videos this offseason. We've talked through double hero RB, zero RB, hero RB. We've done it all. And I know you guys have home league drafts coming up, and I also know that you guys have lives, right? You guys have families, jobs. Some of you guys are lucky enough to have a girlfriend, and you don't have time to watch 3, 4, 5 of my draft strategy videos, all 30 minutes long each. So today, I'm giving you an all-in-one video tying all of these draft strategies together so that if you had just one video to watch before your home league draft so you could go out there and absolutely dominate, it would be this one. So with that being said, make sure you go down below, subscribe, leave a like. Let's go.
Stones, like this froze, ice cold, ice around my body like I'm frozen. She gon' let me.
So the three main draft strategies that we've been talking through this offseason are these right here. We've been talking through hero RB, double hero RB, and zero RB. And the idea here is hero RB, you're taking one running back early, and then you're kind of waiting until later to take your RB2. Double hero RB, you're taking two running backs up top, and you're kind of really skimping out on the depth there. And then zero RB, you're punting running back altogether and making sure the rest of your team is really strong. And I get asked all the time, Ron, which one of these is the best? And personally, I would say hero RB is the best because it's the most balanced, right? We can see here, by the way, this is just all of the strategies listed by their main components or their guidelines, I'd almost say. And hero RB, the bottom, it says this strategy works in all formats. That's the beauty of it with hero RB. Standard, half PPR, PPR, 2 wide receiver, 3 wide receiver, 14 team, 12 team, 8 team. Across the board, hero RB is going to get it done. But I think all of them are very good. Again, hero RB is probably the best because it's most versatile, but double hero RB gets stronger in formats where there's less wide receivers and it's like standard or half PPR scoring, and then zero RB gets stronger the more wide receivers you can start in half PPR, PPR settings. Now, again, they're all great strategies, and I do appreciate the comments that are like, Ron, I love this zero RB video. I have the 10 spot in my home league. I think I'm going to try it out. Again, I appreciate these comments. But the entire point of these draft strategies isn't to pick one that's your favorite and then use it in your draft. It's to understand how all three of them work so that you can go into your draft, take the best player available through the first 3 or 4 rounds, and then from there, those selections will just guide you down the path of one of these draft strategies. You want to have as much tools in your toolbox so that you can stay fluid in a draft room and just take the best possible players early and then worry about sort of the structure and the strategy of your team after you make those decisions. Now, the interesting part is that all of these draft strategies aren't all that different. It kind of just comes down to how many running backs you're taking early. I actually went through and I highlighted the components that were all very similar to each other between these draft strategies, and I titled it the 3 core components of drafting. If you had just 3 rules to take in with you to any draft, it would be these 3 right here. I highlighted in blue with hero RB and double hero RB. Target RBs with league winning upside in the first 3 rounds. Hero RB, you're taking 1 in the first 3 rounds. Double hero RB 2. Zero RB, there's nothing there because you're not taking one early. Green, we have avoid the RB dead zone. In all 3 of these strategies, hero RB and double hero RB, you're avoiding taking those RB2s in rounds 4 through 7. In zero RB, you're not taking a running back until rounds 5 or 6. And then we have yellow, which is win the flex. And the goal in every single one of these strategies is to have enough wide receivers to fill your flex spot plus another 1 or 2 by round 10. So let's kind of break down each one of these components, and then we're going to do some practice mock drafts to sort of show you how you can use these components to your advantage, because I'm never going into a draft saying, okay, I got the 6th spot here and I know this league well. This is going to be a hero RB team. I'm at the 6th spot. Okay, I really hope that Jamar Chase or Tyreek Hill or Cooper Kupp fall to me, and then from there we can make whatever we want happen just based on picking the best players available. So when we look at this blue core component here of finding a league-winning upside, targeting a running back with league-winning upside in the first 3 rounds. Now, this is a idea coined by Pat Kerrane. He's been on the channel. He won BBM3. He's literally a millionaire from fantasy football, which is insane to say. And he made one of the most impactful articles, or he wrote it, in 2021. And the whole idea is that if you're going to draft a running back early, he needs to have league-winning upside. He coined it legendary upside. And it's a really good concept where he outlined the bust rates of running backs in these early rounds. Round 2, it kind of evens out between running back and wide receiver, but round 1 and round 3, running backs are busting at a crazy high rate. They are sinking your team sub 5% win rate. Your average win rate is 8.3%, 1 divided by 12. Sub 5% means that he's just absolutely destroying your team. Running backs are busting because they have a short shelf life, they have short primes, they get injured a ton. So if you're going to take on that risk, he needs to have that legendary upside of, Kamara in 2020, McCaffrey in 2019, Todd Gurley before that. You had Le'Veon Bell and David Johnson before that, and those monstrous seasons of like Chris Johnson and Jamal Charles, Adrian Peterson. They have to dominate fantasy. They have to have a path to be the RB1 overall in fantasy, because if they don't, you might as well take a wide receiver there, because wide receivers are safer bets. And wide receivers also in the past 5 years have kind of closed the gap on running backs in this 20-plus point per game range. 20-plus points per game is still really strong. But again, you need to shoot for that ceiling, because wide receivers have a safer floor, same access to that 20-plus point per game, right? 17 running backs to 15 wide receivers at 20-plus points per game, about the same there. But where running backs really have the advantage is 22.5-plus points per game. When you raise it that much higher, running backs have 8 of those seasons since 2018, running backs just 3. Or wide receivers just 3. So running backs have almost double the amount of wide receivers there, right? 8 22.5-plus point per game seasons to 3 22.5-plus point per game seasons, which is pretty wild. So the whole idea is that if you're going to take a swing on a running back, in Hero RB, you're taking a swing on that running back early. It's one of them. Double Hero RB, you're doing 2 of them. But any running back you take early needs to have access to RB1 overall in fantasy. He needs to be a truly league-winning asset where he's carrying your team forward. If not, then the risk is not worth it. Now, the question is, why take this swing early, right? Why does it have to be early? Why can't I get a 22.5-plus point per game running back elsewhere, even 20-plus point per game running back elsewhere? And the answer is because they're just not really around, right? When we look through the components of drafting again, next up we have green, which is avoid the running back dead zone in rounds 4 through 6. The issue is that we're not seeing those 20-plus point per game running backs come outside of the first 3 rounds, where if we look through 20-plus point per game seasons since 2018, pretty much just spreading the first chart round by round, and you can see running backs have 16 of those 17 20-plus point per game seasons came in the first 3 rounds since 2018. There has never been one in rounds 4 through 6. I went all the way back to 2010, and the only one I could find was Fred Jackson in 2011. Outside of that, you have late-round running backs in round 7-plus, but that was James Conner, who hit 20-plus point per game, and that was really just because you had the weird Le'Veon Bell holdout. Like, you would need a true aligning of the stars to find another 20-plus point per game running back in the dead zone or outside of it. So the thing here is that we don't want to be chasing running backs into this range because they are busting at a high rate. They get hurt a ton. They have short shelf lives. And the upside isn't there in the middle rounds, right? Where at least the risk is worth taking on in the early rounds, right? You can get access to that RB1 overall ceiling. In the middle rounds, it's just not really there. And in previous years, we've seen a ton of guys like, Thomas Rawls, Isaiah Crowell, Mike Davis, all be massive busts. These guys are RB2s propped up by projected volume just because they are the week 1 workhorse in their offense, and they turn out to be awful, awful picks. And we can see even just with the last 2 years of underdog data, the advance rates from taking a running back in rounds 4 through 6 have not been good, whereas rounds 7 on have been an absolute smash pick, just spamming running backs rounds 7 through 10. Now, people love to say there's no such thing as a running back dead zone anymore, all of this. And this is on underdog, where wide receivers get pushed up, and there is still a very clear dead zone here. And it's still very much alive in your home league, where if we look at underdog here, or not even underdog, we compare underdog ADP to sleeper ADP. A lot of home leagues happen on sleeper. You can see across the board, you're paying a premium on all of these dead zone running backs. I kept it broad rounds 3 through 7, right? Because rounds 4 through 6 is a little bit narrow, and it's going to vary from league to league who's going in rounds 4 through 6. So I extended it out by 1, and I found the sleeper ADP, underdog ADP, and then the difference. And across the board, you're paying a huge premium. Najee Harris is a 4th round pick on underdog. He is a early 3rd on sleeper. Breece Hall is even not a value on sleeper. Kenneth Walker, you're paying a huge premium on. Same thing with Miles Sanders. Same thing with DeAndre Swift. It is just an absolute mess across the board. You're paying a premium so you can draft an RB2 in your RB2 spot and just feel good about it. And then you can kind of see it goes back to reasonable prices once you get to Javonte Williams. Once you get to round 7, Javonte's fine, David Montgomery's fine, James Cook is actually a value there. The prices start to get more reasonable. So again, you want to be spamming wide receivers in that range and avoiding the running backs. Now, that's not to say that I've never drafted a running back around 4 through 6. Sometimes you get a price that you like, and you just have to take that running back. I have no problem taking like an ETN in the 4th, a Breece Hall in the 4th round, a J.K. Dobbins in like the early 6th. You just have to be really mindful with the running backs you take in this range. They shouldn't be prompted by volume, and they shouldn't be just for comfortability. You don't have to draft an RB2 there. You can just keep on loading up your flex. Now, a lot of these guys are RB2s, right? And RB2s are one of the more replaceable assets in fantasy football. We've seen last year in like round 7+, you had Miles Sanders, Ramondre Stevenson, Tony Pollard, you had Dameon Pierce, all be startable guys the entire season. And Jacob Sanderson here outlines it in his Thinking About Thinking newsletter, how you can kind of almost stream the position, right? As long as the rest of your team is absolutely stacked and your RB2 is the clear weak point, you can kind of play the waiver wire game and find guys to, give you replacement level production at the RB2 spot. He kind of outlined what you could do last year. Latavius Murray provided a 12-game stretch of 11.7 points per game, increases output to 12.2 points per game after Melvin Gordon was released. Deonta Foreman had 11.6 points per game over an 11-game stretch after McCaffrey was traded away. Jeff Wilson had 2 stints of 11.2 points per game and then 10.5 points per game. You had Jerick McKinnon, who was at 18.6 points per game over the final 7 games. You had Samaje Perine had 2 games of 20.4 points per game without Joe Mixon last year. Eno Benjamin had 13.8 points per game and 3 spot starts for James Conner. You also had several other one-off streamers combined with the late-round options such as Jamal Williams, James Robinson, and Raheem Mostert combined to cobble together our stream score, which matched the expected production of the lead backs we discussed today. So he does an article where he talks through streaming running backs, and he literally sort of guides your hand down the path of streaming these RB2 options. Of course, you're not going to hit on every single one. You're not going to get to the waiver first, but you can kind of patch it together in a way where people's RB2s it's not like these guys are putting up 20 points every week. Like this is a 12 point per game guy, and a lot of them are busting in a given week, right? Like an RB2 can give you like 7 points in a given week, and it's not going to sink your matchup. So RB2 is one of those positions that you can punt a little bit. You can get some guys late. You can churn through waivers and kind of piece it together so that you can bypass the dead zone and instead win the flex, which brings us to our third core component here. When we look at the yellow similarities from earlier, we can see that we want to be winning the flex across the board. Now, the reason we want to be winning the flex, we'll get into that in a little bit, but it's because we have nothing but just straight values across the board. This is on Sleeper, comparing the wide receivers in rounds 3 through 7, and you're just getting nothing but values. Now, the reason we like Underdog ADP is because there is real money on the line. Everybody is 18 plus, 21 plus. An app like Sleeper, hand up. I've been that guy. I remember as a kid, like going on like a long road trip, I would be spamming either like ESPN mock drafts or like Sleeper mock drafts. And you could fall asleep in like the 8th round. You can auto pick the rest. And the ADP is also aggregated since like January. So it's just an absolute mess. And Underdog instead updates every single day with real money on the line. There's sharp drafters in there. And that makes it one of the best ADPs possible. People are out here grinding since spring, crunching the data on what optimal drafting looks like. And that's why if you want to get ready for your home league, make sure you check it out. Hop on Underdog Fantasy. Use promo code RON. I have a link in the description and the comment section down below. If you click it, it'll take you to Underdog Fantasy. It'll use promo code RON. It'll match your deposit up to $100. You can hop into some best ball drafts and get some really good practice where I've been in so many of these Underdog drafts and I just understand where, right, Chris Olave is a 2nd round pick on Underdog, but he's a 3rd round pick on Sleeper. If I get to the 3rd round and Chris Olave is there, I know something's off. I take Chris Olave. Same thing with a guy like Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley is now a 2nd round pick on Underdog here, 23.9, and he's a 4th rounder on Sleeper. If I get to the 4th round and a guy that I consistently see go 2nd round on Underdog is available there, I'm taking him. So you can just get to a spot where like it's almost muscle memory. Like these players shouldn't be available here, and you just naturally take the best player. But outside of that, the whole idea behind winning the flex and passing on the dead zone is that even in home leagues still, again, you can say that the running back dead zone isn't a thing. I think that there's a case to be made that on Underdog, the running back dead zone isn't a thing. I think everything is efficiently priced there. But in your home league, we showed with the Sleeper ADP, you're paying a premium on those dead zone running backs while these wide receivers are going way later than they should. You're getting huge discounts on DJ Moore, Jerry Jeudy, Christian Watson, Mike Williams, Brandon Ayuk, Deontay Johnson. You're getting huge discounts on all of them. In rounds 4 through 6, you really want to be making sure that you are taking advantage of these values after you've already sort of taken your swing on running back early on, because over the last 2 years, we've seen league-winning wide receivers come out of this range of rounds 4 through 6. We saw Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jalen Waddle last year. Before that, you had Jamar Chase, Deebo Samuel, Cooper Kupp. Before that, you had Stephon Diggs with Josh Allen. You get these massive league-winning seasons that you need to be taking swings on. You also had like Calvin Ridley in year 3. You had DK Metcalf in year 2. Chris Godwin in year 3. A lot of these league-winning wide receivers are coming from this range. They're not coming in rounds 10 plus. Like, we're looking at like Juju Smith-Schuster, Zay Jones, Tyler Boyd this year. Like, maybe you can get one of these rookie guys that come on down the stretch, but in terms of like those truly impactful seasons, you have to be taking those stabs in this sort of like wide receiver green zone in this rounds 4 through 6. Now, you might ask, like, why do you want wide receivers through the flex? Why do you care about winning the flex? And the whole idea of grabbing all these wide receivers is so that you can be loaded at the flex spot. Across the board, you want to be flexing wide receivers. This is a tool called Win the Flex on RotoViz. They coined the term Win the Flex. And you can see, after about pick 30, 36, right, after the first 3 rounds, wide receivers are projected to outscore running backs the rest of the way in PPR. Now, this gap closes in half PPR, but because running back gets pushed up so high in half PPR leagues, wide receiver is still going to give you a week-to-week advantage in those leagues. Now, when we look through this and we talk about winning the flex, we want to have enough wide receivers so that we have stacked options at wide receiver, through the flex, the entire thing, so that it looks good. Now, once round 7 comes, advantage tilts back to running backs, but you want to be making sure that you are filling the flex with intent here through those first 10 rounds. So you can kind of see, this is a little bit of a chart, give or take, right? So again, we want to fill wide receiver through the flex plus 10 in 10 rounds, plus another 1 or 2. So in a 2 wide receiver, 2 running back, 1 flex league, you want about 4 to 5 wide receivers through 10 rounds. In a 2 running back, 2 wide receiver, 2 flex league, you want about 5 to 6. 2 running back, 3 wide receiver, 1 flex, you want about 5 to 6. 3 wide receiver, 2 flex, about 6 to 7. It just depends how many wide receivers can you put in your lineup, and then add another 1 or 2 by round 10. And the idea there is you want to have enough wide receivers to sort of withstand bye weeks, injuries, anything that may go wrong. You just, at every point in the season, you don't want to have to like grab guys off waivers and put like a Marquez Valdez-Scantling in your flex. You want to be saving that for your RB2 spot because, again, right, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Kadarius Toney goes down, Marquez Valdez-Scantling isn't a way better play. But if you have an RB2, like you have Tank Bigsby on your bench and Travis Etienne goes down, you now have this like monster top 15 back to put in your RB2 spot. So if you can just already fill up your flex with good wide receiver options, you can just hone in on that RB2 spot and just sort of filter through handcuffs, waiver wire guys, late round picks, and sort of piece it together that way. So now we have the 3 components of drafting here: targeting running backs with league-winning upside in the first 3 rounds, avoiding the running back dead zone in rounds 4 through 6, and winning the flex. And those are really the 3 components that you need to win your league. So now I wanted to kind of show you guys each of these different strategies, how I'm going into drafts with them. So we're going to do 4 mock drafts. We have 2 on FantasyPros, 2 on Sleeper. All of them are different formats to kind of fit all of your home leagues. Now, I will say, for all of these mock drafts, I just sort of went in there with my rankings. I just updated the rankings actually yesterday. I updated the rankings yesterday, and you can find them all on patreon.com/Ron Stewart. I have my top 200 out there currently, and I was literally just looking off of them in these mock drafts and just like, okay, I like this guy here. I have this guy ranked here. Okay, I'll take him here. And it's just a top 200. They are tiered. I have the ideal round I'm taking each player, so like my target drafted round, and then there's a checklist. So like as you go, you can just check off players, and it's perfect. It's a top 200 list. It's on Patreon. It's the cheat sheet, ranking sheet, whatever you want to call it, that I'm bringing into every single one of my drafts with me. I use it in my home league. I use it in all of these high stakes drafts we do. It is an all-in-one package for PPR and half PPR leagues. On top of that, you get access to my weekly rankings in the season. You get my in-season, rest of season rankings. You get my waiver wire article every week, where I break down who I'm putting my fab on and the waiver wire guys that I'm sort of scooping up as RB2s and 0 RB options, so that when you use these strategies, I can kind of guide you down that avenue of how we're sort of working waivers here. And then we also have exclusive Sunday start-sit streams all on the Patreon, patreon.com/Ron Stewart. Link will be in the description and the comment section down below if that interests you. Now, let's get into these mock drafts, huh? We can finally talk through some 2023 stuff here. And the first mock draft we did was on Sleeper. The format here was 1 QB, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, a flex spot, and 6 bench spots. Now, this is your half PPR, like very casual home league, right? Where it's just 2 wide receivers, 1 flex spot. We can't be as aggressive with wide receivers here. And I think it's important for me to show you kind of how I'm using these components in a league like this. So we get to the 10 spot. I just sort of randomized a spot to pick from. I would have loved Bijan. Bijan gets sniped from us. I'm going to take this off the screen. We'll show it later in terms of the entire team. But you guys can see, again, 2 running backs, 2 wide receiver, tight end, flex spot. We go CeeDee Lamb at the 110. Even in half PPR, I'm fine there. You can play the turn how you want. Like if you see Lamb in the tier with like AJ Brown, Devontae Adams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and you see like Saquon, Pollard, Chubb in their own tier, there's a case to be made that like 4 wide receivers versus 3 running backs, maybe take a stab on the running back, see if you can get one of those wide receivers to come back to you. But we took CeeDee Lamb anyways, and then we came back around and we get Pollard. We took a gamble that he'd make it back to us. He does. And I've gotten the question a ton. I get in like almost every live stream, Ron, can I stack Pollard with CeeDee Lamb? And this is what I'll say. To me, it's neither good or bad. I don't think stacking running back with wide receiver really does much, but I think that this is a good enough offense that you can take Pollard and CeeDee Lamb and feel fine about it. But you want to cut it off there. So be careful. Don't draft like Brandon Cooks in the middle rounds. You can still take Dak Prescott because I think that that'll be good here, but just don't take any other Cowboys outside of quarterback from rounds like 3 through 10. Just keep it at this, and that will be like just fine. Again, it's a good enough offense for you to get away with it. RBs go early on sleeper. We come back to round 3, and I have Calvin Ridley as a huge value. He's my highest ranked player, but right behind him is Jahmyr Gibbs in my rankings. So we sort of play the running back game. We take Jahmyr Gibbs. We get Calvin Ridley to come back to us, and that's beautiful. On the sleeper platform, where Ridley goes is absolutely criminal. And just by taking the best draft values through 4 rounds, the draft room itself has kind of now led us down a double hero RB build. Again, right? We go to the 10 spot, and I wasn't like, all right, this is going to be double hero RB build. It was, no. We'll just take the best player available, and then we'll kind of see what happens. So through 4 rounds, we can now mold this into a proper double hero RB build. We come around in the 5th round, and something to be really cognizant of is in these formats, right? When we look at what a team looks like here, shallower formats where it's just 2 wide receiver, 1 flex, you want to be really on top of quarterback and tight end because the less starting spots you have, the bigger percentage of your lineup quarterback and tight end make up. So I think even in leagues like this, Kelsey, you can justify Kelsey much more if he's taking up 1/7 of your lineup than a like 3 wide receiver, 2 flex league taking Kelsey there. The shallower the lineup, the more advantage you have from taking those onesies. So we take Waller a little bit earlier than I'd like to take him in the 5th round, but I was fine taking him just given the platform and the format. I also knew that the 2 guys on the turn had Burrow and Mahomes already. I was between Herbert and Darren Waller here, so I pushed Justin Herbert past the turn because there's no way that those guys are going to take a quarterback. And we get Herbert in the 6th, which is pretty crazy. But now, through 6 rounds, quarterback is set up, 2 running backs are set up, 2 wide receivers are set up, and tight end is set up. And we can now just focus on absolutely stacking our flex and then getting some upside running backs later on. And we get to the 7th round, 7-10 Deontay Johnson, even in a half PPR, is way too cheap. We come back around, we stack up Quentin Johnson to Justin Herbert, rookie wide receiver that we don't need to start right away, and we can sort of take an upside swing on him and sort of wait for him to get back up to speed. Or not get back up to speed, but get up to speed so that he can then have like huge spike weeks with Justin Herbert down the stretch and be a league winner. We have 9th round here. It felt like Khalil Herbert fell a little bit here. Yeah, this was like 10th round, or no, it was like late 9th round. Khalil Herbert decided to add a running back to the room, and then we come back around in the 10th, and Elijah Moore's ADP on Sleeper is just absolutely insane. He's like a 7-8 turn guy on Underdog and like in these high stakes drafts. He's an absolute steal here. So we take Elijah Moore, and I think that's how I would play a home league like this through 10 rounds, where you know the values on Sleeper. You can take some of those stabs on like quarterback, tight end, running back early on, but sort of making sure that you're not, taking a bunch of swings in the dead zone, you're doing things correctly, and then we just take shots at running back later on. On Sleeper, these 3 guys' prices are broken as well. Tank Bigsby, Jalen Warren, Kenneth Gainwell. Those are all guys that should be like 10th, 11th round picks. You can get them all in like the 12th, 13th round. Maybe things will get a little bit sharper on Sleeper, but for now, they are really good value. So that is the team. It's a fun team. Double hero RB. We have Herbert stacked to Quentin Johnston. Double hero RB where Pollard and Jahmyr Gibbs feels good. You have CeeDee Lamb and Calvin Ridley, which feels good. Darren Waller and tight end. Like, there's not really a single weakness in this entire team, which is a good problem to have. Now, we went Quentin Johnson as our next option, Elijah Moore. Like, we're going to be stacked through the flex the entire season, and we have plenty of running back depth. If you have a home league that has this type of setting, I really like setting up a team sort of like that. Now, next up, we have a FantasyPros mock that I wanted to show you guys, where this time we pick from the 7 spot. Again, it's half PPR. It's a 2 wide receiver, 2 flex league, half PPR. Now, this is actually the setup of my home league. This isn't going to be that crazy to get the 6th spot, and in your home league, that's especially half PPR, to have Tyreek Hill or Kupp make it to the 6 or later. Where, like, Tyreek Hill's a guy that I would take as high as, like, probably 4th overall, but in these home leagues, you're going to get Tyreek Hill and Cooper Kupp to fall to, like, 6, 7, 8, 9, and I wanted to show kind of what that would look like to me. Even in half PPR, again, give me Tyreek here. In a 2 wide receiver, 2 flex league, I'm fine being pretty heavy on wide receiver, right? We're going to need, like, 5 or 6 through 10 rounds, so taking one early is no big deal. Now, in the second round here, I was debating Nick Chubb, I was debating Tony Pollard, I was debating Saquon Barkley, all gone at this point. We just go best player available, and we go Amon-Ra St. Brown. Then we go to the 3rd round, and Devonta Smith, who is a middle of the 2nd pick, like late 2nd pick on Underdog, gets to us at the 307. Now, I debated Andrews, which would have been, like we're sort of headed down the avenue of 0 RB through 2 rounds here. And in a perfect world, you have an elite tight end or an elite quarterback in a 0 RB build, but instead, we go with Devonta Smith. He's, like, never there. To me, it felt too early for a Breece Hall or a Travis Etienne, and I didn't want to force RB. The whole point of this video is to take the best players early on so that, you know, the whole point is you take the best players early on and you get familiar with these draft strategies so that you can take the best players and then still make a structurally sound team after you've now taken the best values on the board. So instead of forcing running back as being like, oh man, I really want a running back through the first 3 rounds, all the good ones are gone. I think it's a mistake a lot of fantasy gamers get into where they're like, man, I need a running back, like I'm just going to take one here. And then they just take a guy who like probably should have been more of a 4th or 5th round pick, but they just wanted the position. So here we go, best player available. We go Devonta Smith. And then same thing happens with Judy here. Now, I'll be honest, we got sniped on Breece Hall. Breece Hall came to us in the 4th. I would have taken Breece Hall very, very easily. Same thing with ETN. Both of them are gone. So we're not going to force it. Again, I'm not taking 4th round J.K. Dobbins. I'm not taking 4th round Aaron Jones. This is when we get into kind of the dead zone area. So instead, we go best player available, and we go Jerry Jeudy, who's a fine pick to me in the 4th round. Now, through 4 rounds, we've taken wide receivers. Taking the best player on the board has now led us down 0 RB. So now it's just time to execute that strategy the rest of the way. Now, in the 5th round, I would have been fine taking a Dobbins, a Pierce, a Walker, but now those guys are all gone. So we just have to sort of adjust accordingly here, and we just take best player available again. We take DJ Moore. But now what I will say here is we have wide receivers through the flex +1. If you start your draft with wide receivers right here, right, where you start wide receivers through the first 4 rounds, at that point, +1 is good. You don't have to do +2. So that was the last wide receiver we took in this draft. And then it's time to sort of figure out everything else. In the 6th round, I debated tight end versus quarterback. I still didn't like the running backs in this range. We took Kittle. We come back around. We get a falling Trevor Lawrence. And then I kind of like the way that we hammered running backs here at the end, where we took Dalvin Cook. We took Jamal Williams. Those are 2 guys that can give you early season production, where Jamal Williams has Alvin Kamara, who's suspended early on. You have Dalvin Cook, who has the Breece Hall injury behind him. So those guys should be startable guys early on. Jared McKinnon in any PPR leagues or half PPR leagues should be like a startable high-end RB3 most of the season, so that's a good option to have. Jalen Warren's a nice upside pick. Zeke Elliott's a guy who has like a ton of touchdown upside on this Patriots offense, and if Ramondre was to go down, he would be startable. And then 2 upside swings in Ty Chandler and Keontae Ingram. So this draft is what like a pure hardcore 0 RB would look like in one of these formats, but I think we did it well, where we remained flexible. We took the best values. You know, we can start 4 wide receivers at a time. We're stacked through flex. Quarterback and tight end look good. And I think that Dalvin Cook and Jamal Williams are actually guys that are going to give us an advantage early on, where we can actually like win a couple games early on and then just buy ourselves some time to churn through waivers for those RB2 options. Now, our 3rd mock draft here is on Sleeper, where we drafted from the 102 on Sleeper here. And this was a 2 wide receiver, 2 flex, but full PPR league. So same format as last time in terms of roster, but it's full PPR instead. Now, here we go from an early spot. We pick from the 2nd overall pick here, and we go Jefferson. Now, some of you guys might be like, oh, Jefferson will never go 2nd overall. I think in home leagues, McCaffrey going 101 is very much commonplace, but if not, just like pretend that Jefferson is Jamar Chase. Now, in the 2nd round, we go best player available. We go Jalen Waddle here, who to me is more of a mid-2nd. And then we get JT in the third. JT seems like a guy who in home leagues especially, people are going to be scared off of him. They're not going to want to take JT. The holdout's like scary, all the trade stuff. I think one of the better options right now in fantasy in general is executing sort of a hero RB draft strategy where you double up on like wide receiver or like tight end wide receiver, where you go like Kelsey wide receiver, and you go Jonathan Taylor in the third round, and you kind of build out a hero RB build from there. Because the minute that Jonathan Taylor reports, he practices, he gets traded to a good spot, he's now a mid to early second, and you just profited a bunch and got like a free monster hero RB on your team. Now, we come back around to the 411. We kind of understand that this is going to be a hero RB build here. Now, I usually won't take an unstacked quarterback, but on Sleeper, especially with their PPR rankings, quarterback gets pushed way up. And I liked all the wide receivers of like Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy, Drake London. I knew we'd get one back, so I went Justin Herbert. So make sure when you're on the clock, especially at these turns, do that mental math of like, okay, I have 3 wide receivers I like versus 1 quarterback I like, and this guy only has 2 picks here. So we knew we were going to get, at the very least, one of those 3 wide receivers. So we take the quarterback here. We get Jerry Jeudy in the 5th round, which is just absolutely insane. And then we get Mike Williams in the 6th. Just to stack to Justin Herbert, he's also way too cheap there. He should be much more of like a 5th round pick. We get him at the 6-11, which is crazy. And then we come back around, and sometimes I'll get greedy in these hero RB builds, and I'll wait on RB2 until like round 8, round 9. But Javonte in the 7th is an easy button for me to press. Like, I just updated the rankings yesterday. I have him as my 603 in my recent rankings update. So taking him at like, the early 7th, so that's like a round later than where I would take him. Absolutely fine taking Javonte there. 8th round, we stack up Justin Herbert. Was just too easy not to. And now our priority is going to shift to running back and tight end. We have wide receivers through the flex, +2. We took Bateman in the 10th. We took Khalil Herbert in the 9th. So we have a squad here that's set up where we can see the starting lineup is looking pretty good. Where we have Herbert at QB. We have JT and Javonte Williams at running back and RB2. Jefferson and Waddle. Jeudy, Mike Williams. We have Quentin Johnson on the bench. Rashad Bateman on the bench. We have wide receivers through the flex +2 through 10 rounds. You have Khalil Herbert as a nice depth piece at running back. But in this build, you're going to have to punt something. You can't just make the perfect fantasy football team when the lineup is this deep. So we punted tight end. We took Gerald Everett to stack with Justin Herbert, which I think is like a decent option. And then we also took Jawan Johnson late, who's been getting a ton of buzz in camp. And then we kind of cheesed our way to Tank Bigsby and Jalen Warren again as good depth pieces. Now, this is a really balanced team. Again, Jonathan Taylor hero RB builds to me are really fun. But then we have our last mock draft here, where we did one last one on FantasyPros, and this was a full PPR, 3 wide receiver, 1 flex league. And I wanted to add this in as a bonus, because I've had a lot of questions of like, if I take Kelsey early, what should my team look like? And if the top 7 picks go exactly like this in my league, I would take Travis Kelce. Those are the exact 7 players I have ranked ahead of Kelce. So I figured, why not show what a Kelce team would look like? Now, this is a wide receiver heavy hungry room because it's full PPR. So we take Kelce, and then we're fine taking a running back here where we go Saquon Barkley. To me, I would have gone Pollard here, but we took Pollard in the first mock. I figured, let's get a little bit different here. And then the third, we take Calvin Ridley again. Again, in these home leagues, Calvin Ridley is an absolute steal. And we have just 1 wide receiver through 3 rounds here. Usually, I don't like having 0 wide receivers through 3 rounds, but it's not like an absolute must. But we have 1 wide receiver through 3 rounds here. I'm usually a wide receiver heavy guy, but we're going to be fine, right? And this is kind of steering its way into a hero RB build until we get to the 4th round. And my best ranked player is Breece Hall. And I wanted to kind of show what happens when we break the rules that get a little bit weird here, right? Here, we don't take a single wide receiver. We take just 1 wide receiver through the first 4 rounds. We take a tight end in round 1. And then we actually bite the bullet and take a running back in round 4. And this is almost now a modified double hero RB where we're bending the rules a little bit and treating Breece Hall like instead we took him in like the 3rd round, or we took Saquon in the 1st and, Breece in the 3rd. Breece Hall, to me, is the type of guy that you can bet on to be a double hero RB. So I think this is actually a really fun build to show you guys where you can bend these rules as long as you're fitting within the 3 components of drafting, which we are, right? We're going to have wide receivers through the flex +2. We avoided the dead zone outside of just 1 stab. We took 1 singular stab in the dead zone, which I think is always going to be fine. And then we did take a shot on Saquon Barkley early. Now, after that, we go just straight wide receivers, right? At that point, we have 1 wide receiver through 4 rounds, so it's time to make up for lost time, and we just rattle them off. We go Drake London, we go Christian Watson. Drake London in the 5th is absolutely insane. Christian Watson in the 6th is absolutely insane. He's like an early 4th on Underdog. We didn't debate strongly taking Trevor Lawrence there, but we went Watson instead. We went Jordan Addison, so now we have wide receivers through the flex. Then we take 2 more, and Elijah Moore and Quentin Johnston. Elijah Moore and Quentin Johnson's prices in these home leagues are absolutely insane. But now we have a double hero RB build where we have wide receivers through the flex plus 2 through 10 rounds. And I feel set at every position besides quarterback, right? Like, I even feel set at wide receiver despite not taking one in the first 2 rounds. Like, I think our wide receiver room is still very much fine. So now what it comes down to is taking some depth pieces at running back and then taking 2 quarterbacks so you can kind of stream and figure things out week to week. So we took Jamal Williams, who can like fill in for Breece Hall early on in the season while Breece Hall gets back from the ACL. Jamal Williams has Alvin Kamara on a suspension. We have Jalen Warren, nice upside pick. We have Anthony Richardson, who's a crazy upside pick for quarterback. We have Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who's like a nice depth piece. And then we take Tua, who is, I don't love Tua, but he's a high floor guy. And in the 14th round, that's just way too cheap for Tua. Now, that is going to complete the entire video. I hope that you guys feel as prepared for your home leagues as ever. We went through the entire 3 components of drafting. Again, target running backs with league-winning upside in the first 3 rounds. Avoid the RB dead zone in rounds 4 through 6, and win the flex. And if you want, the full write-up of the draft strategies and the 3 components, there it is, right? I think like this screenshot right here, to me, is really all you need to go into your draft. That and the rankings cheat sheet. Again, on the Patreon, patreon.com/Ron Stewart, I have my entire top 200 rankings, so you guys can go out there, dominate your home leagues. There's a checklist. It's for PPR and half PPR leagues. I have the target rounds there, and it's not even so much player A versus player B, but I kind of set it up in a way where I push up those elite running backs that I believe had that legendary ceiling early on, and then you see me sort of back away from running backs in the dead zone, pushing up those wide receivers, and it kind of just guides you down the path of these draft strategies where you're looking at running back early, you're avoiding the dead zone, you're spamming running backs round 7 on, you're making sure you get those good wide receivers in the dead zone, and it kind of just naturally leads yourself down that path on top of kind of player preference that a lot of rankings have. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I hope that you guys go out there and absolutely crush your home leagues with these rankings, with the strategy videos, all of that good stuff. I know you guys have home leagues coming up, so good luck on that. And as always, I appreciate you guys watching, and I will see you guys. Also, of course, leave a like, subscribe, comment. I appreciate you guys watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.
Stones, like this froze, ice cold, ice around my body like I'm frozen.